Okay, so I've been looking at this question and I'm reading the question, and one of the main words in this question is protection. So if you look if you look in the index under protection, ground fault is there and it says 14-102. So we come to section 14 and we're looking under 14-102 ground fault protection. And here we're matching the words in the question. A 2000 amp Y connected. Circuit supplied by a solidly grounded system operating at 150 volts to ground. So systems rated more than 150 volts to ground, less than 750 volts to phase, and 1000 amps or more require ground fault protection. Incandescent lamps are used to determine if phase rotation between two alternators are equal. When synchronizing two alternators together, what state should all three lights show for equal phase rotation? Dark, dark, dark is the correct answer. In a direct current shunt generator, if the prime mover rotation and field connection were reversed, what would happen to the output voltage? The polarity of output voltage would remain the same. Magnetic fields relative to one another would stay the same, resulting in the same output polarity. Okay, so for this question, an average house has an annual energy usage of 10,500 kilowatt an hour. If the home can expect 13 or 1,350 kilowatt hours per kilowatt per year in energy production, how many kilowatt of solar panels are needed to offset the annual energy usage? So the 1,350 kilowatt hours is the production of the solar panels. And the average house annual energy usage is 10,500. So if we take our 10,500, we divide it by what the solar panels are creating, the 1350, we're going to get 7.77. So 7.78 kilowatts. So solar panels, total annual energy use divided by expected energy production equals 7.78 kilowatts of solar panels. That's how you get the answer. A lead acid battery has been left sitting in an uncharged state. What is the result of this neglect? The plates become sulfated. If a lead acid battery has been left sitting for long periods of time, increased sulfation will take place on the plates, causing damage to the battery. How many conductors are required to connect between the operating handle of a gang-operated switch, grounding conductor, and a metallic gradient control mat? I'm pretty sure that this is found in section 36. So section 36 is high voltage. I'll tell you exactly what they call it in the code. Okay, so Looking at the question, we got a gang operated switch grounding conductor and a metallic gradient control mat. Gradient control mats are only found in high voltage. So this would be section 36. There's also, we're looking at the keywords. There's also grounding conductor. So if we just scan 36, we got grounding and bonding, station ground electrode. We keep scanning station ground resistance, station exemption, connections to station ground, gang operated switch handle grounds. Okay, so now this looks promising. So now we're looking at how many conductors are required to connect between the operating handle of a gang operated switch grounding conductor and a metal gradient control mat. And we're reading this and we're seeing okay, so as we read along, we read by the use of a metallic gradient control mat connected to the operating handle grounding conductor as required in subrule 1 by two separate conductors, each not less than number 2 gauge copper. Okay, so that was 36.310 2A. So now over here on the answer, we go, I pressed back by accident. Hold on. How many conductors is it? The operating handle of a gang operated switch grounding. The answer is 2. What is the minimum size RW90 secondary copper conductor that can be run 2 in parallel in raceway between a dry type 225 kVA 600 volt 3-phase 3-wire 12208 volt 3-phase 4-wire and the 800 amp splitter? What is the minimum size? So there's a lot going on in this question. Only some of the information is important. So that's why you have to constantly be reading these questions over and over again, because what is the minimum size RW90 secondary copper conductor? Okay, so most importantly, we got secondary, and we're looking at copper conductors, right? That can be run 2 in parallel in raceway between a dry type. So we got 225 kVA. So it's 600 volts on the primary, right? And it's 3-phase 3-wire. It's not that important. 120 208 on the secondary. 120 208 on the secondary volts. So section 26 is transformers. Okay, so first things first, we got our 225 kVA. We're going to divide that by the 208 because it's the secondary. But at the same time, it's also 3-phase. So we're going to also have to do 208 times 1.732, and we're going to get our 360 volts because it's 3-phase. and we're going to do our 225,000 volts for our transformer power, right? We're going to divide that by our 360, and we're going to get our 625 amps. Okay? Once we get our 625 amps, they said that they want this to be in 2 parallel runs in a raceway. So we're going to have to divide that by 2. So we divide that by 2. We get 312.5 amps. Now, in table 2, okay, so we reached table 2. We have our 312.5 amps. We need to multiply this because we're looking for conductors by 1.25. Okay, so we got our 312.5 and we're multiplying that by 1.25. 1.25. And we're getting 390.6. 390.625. Okay, now rule 4-006 says that if it's over 100 amps, we must use the 75-degree column. So we're looking at the 75-degree column, and we're looking at 390 amps. And we're looking. Is 380 good enough? No, it's too little. So we're looking at the 420. Now the 420 in the 75-degree column, we look over and it says 600 kc mil. Therefore, we got 2 runs of 600 kc mil for the answer for this dry type transformer. So before we go, let's check section 26-256, and we'll just read it quickly. So rule 26-256 and 2 mandates that the ampacity of primary and secondary conductors for transformers be not smaller than 125% of the respective primary or secondary currents. It is intended by Rule 4 that if the primary overcurrent protection does not exceed 125% of the primary rated current for dry transformers, such overcurrent protective devices will adequately protect transformers and primary and secondary conductors, and that the fundamental provision of Rule 14-104 will be met. So, like anything else, anytime you're checking for you're looking for conductors, it's most of the time CSA approved is 1.25. Okay, a 600 12208 transformer is protected on the primary side by a 100 amp fuse. A lighting panel is installed on the secondary side. Pressed back by accident. A lighting panel is installed on the secondary side without secondary overcurrent protection. What is the minimum standard rating of panel that may be installed? Okay, so this question is it's not tricky. It's actually really easy. Current has an inverse relationship to voltage when it comes to ratios. So in this ratio, right, we got a 600 volts, right, on the primary to a 208 volts on the secondary. Now, if you do 600 volts divided by 208, you're going to get 2.88, right? 2.88 to 1. So where the 600 being 2.88 and the 208 being 1. So now we have a ratio of 2.88 to 1. We're now going to multiply the protection on the primary side, which is 100 amps. We're going to multiply that by 2.88. And we're going to get 288 amps. Okay? So 288 amps hold on. Sorry, I had to think for a second. Okay, so we have 2.88 to 1. So it's inverse, right? So the 100 amps on the primary side, the amperage is actually inverse. So if the ratio is 2.88 to 1 for voltage, then for current, it would be 1 to 2.88. So where the current is 100 amps on the primary side, the current is actually going to be 100 times 2.88 on the secondary side, meaning that the current for the secondary is actually 288 amps. Now we're going to look at the answers that they're giving here, and the answers say the closest answer we have is 225, and it's not close enough. So we have to go for the next biggest thing, which is a 400 amps. And that's how they got the 400 amps panel board rating. But I am curious to actually look at this rule 14-606. Let's look at that and see what it says. Okay, 14-606 panel board overcurrent protection. Except for panel boards where more than 90% of the overcurrent devices, supply feeders, or motors, branch circuits, every panel board shall be protected on the supply side by overcurrent devices having a rating not greater than that of the panel board. So in number 2 at the end here, it basically says panel board rating in amperes is not less than the overcurrent rating in amperes multiplied by the ratio of the primary to secondary voltage. So pretty much that's what we just did. It's just explaining it there. Nothing too crazy. A delta-delta transformer bank consists of 3 transformers, each rated at 65 kVA, with one of the transformer removed from service and the bank is reconnected for service. What is the maximum output of this reconnected transformer bank? Okay, so we got 3 deltas and 1 is removed. So we actually got an open delta situation here. So we got 65 kVA, right? Times 2. And we're going to times that 0.86. And we got 111.8. Okay, let's times it by point. Was it 866? Brings the answer a little bit closer at 112.58. Anyways, when you look at the answers here, you got 113 kVA. That's the closest answer to your 112.58, which they would have rounded up, and you would get your answer. Now there is a way to use three transformers, but you have to multiply it by a different number. I don't do it this way. I just use the 0.866 off of two transformers, but this way it's good to know. So you could do three transformers at 65 apiece times three. You're gonna get 195 kVA, and if you multiply that by 0.577, then you'll also come up with the same answer at 112.5. They round it up to 113, and your answer is 113 kVA. So that's that for this question. Two transformers rated at 100 kVA at 2300 volts are connected in a Scott configuration. What is the rating of the main winding? Okay. I knew how to do this. Stopped studying for a while and then I forgot how to do this. So there's two transformers. I'm sure that it's similar to a open delta. So you got two transformers at 100 kVA. So that's basically 200 kVA right there. At 2300 volts, that does not matter at all. I can tell you that right now, that doesn't matter. Are connected in a Scott configuration. So most importantly, it's the Scott configuration and the kVA. So wait a minute, I'm gonna find the answer. Okay, so in a Scott configuration, total of the transformer is total of the transformer is one of the transformers. In this case, 100 kVA. So you got 200 kVA, so the total is 100 kVA. In the Scott configuration with teaser winding, it's similar to an open delta where basically the total amount of transformer banks, so in this case there's two transformer banks at 100 kVA, would give you a accumulation of 200 kVA, and you multiply that by your 87%, just like an open delta. So Scott configuration with teaser is basically open delta, and Scott configuration by itself is basically one of the transformers. So now after that side that side quest there, we go back to the question. Two transformers rated at 100 kVA at 2300 volts are connected in a Scott configuration. What is the rating of the main winding? So we got two transformers at 100 kVA. We know Scott configuration means it's equal to one of the outputs of the transformers, which is 100 kVA. Next question. What is the minimum size of rigid PVC conduit required to enclose 4 number 2 AWG T90 and 4 number 4 AWG T90 conductors? Okay, for this question, we got to get the area of all the conductors, add that together, then look for a rigid PVC conduit and match the area with that to tell us what size PVC conduit, rigid PVC conduit we're going to need. So table 6K, so 6G, H. All right, we got 6K. Okay, so first things first, we're looking for rigid PVC conduit required to enclose 4 number 2 AWG T90. So we're looking for T90. We got T90 nylon here, and we're looking at 4 of them. No, for number twos. So this is the section for 4 at the top. And we're looking at number 2 gauge. So for number twos, and we got 299.26 millimeters squared. Okay, now we're also looking for T90 number 4s. And we need 4 of them. So across from 4, for gauge, and 4 conductors, and we got 212.79. So we're gonna add those together. Oops. We're gonna add our 212.79 plus our 299.26 equals, for a total of 512.5 millimeters squared. So now we need to go for, because this is for power, so we're looking for 40% fill, and we're going to table 9. So, all right, so I've brought us to table 9G, and we're looking for whatever the question is asking for. So the minimum size of rigid PVC conduit, paying very close attention to the wording, we got internal diameters and cross-sectional areas of rigid PVC conduit at 40% fill. So we're just taking our number 512, and we're looking, what can we use? So 456, that's too small. So we're gonna go to the next biggest size, which is 810.73. We're looking across, and we get 53. So our nominal trade size is 53 millimeters. That's how we get our answer. Okay. Next question. What type of bender is most commonly used to bend 21 TS-EMT conduit? So hydraulic bender is actually generally used for larger raceways, 35 and larger. So what type of bender is most commonly used for 21 TS-EMT? It's the one shot. All right, here we have given the following: 600 volt 3-phase 27 kVAR dry type capacitor. Anytime they say capacitor, automatically you're going to section 26. Now under section 26, when you look at capacitors, we'll go there in a minute. Let's just finish reading the question. So what is the maximum rating of non-time delay fuses that can be used to protect the capacitor? So using the code book, we got here, we're gonna look for 26. We'll start at 100, I guess. Too far. Okay. No, 26. All right, so we've reached 26, and we're looking at capacitors. And in the question, they're talking about non-time delay fuses. maximum ratings of non-time delay fuses. When we're talking about time delay, non-time delay, circuit breakers, all of this, it falls under overcurrent protection. So an overcurrent device, so section 26 or 26210, overcurrent protection, an overcurrent device rated or set as low as practical without causing unnecessary opening circuit, but not exceeding 250% of the rated current of the capacitor. So now to calculate our amperage and then 250%. So what we want to do is we got our 600 volts and it's three phase. So 600 times 1.732, you should memorize that. 1.732, it is 1039. Right? Just minimizing the amount of calculations you have to do when you're doing these questions. So we got 27 kVAR, which is dirty power, right? We're talking about capacitors. We're talking about reactive power. It's basically watts, but it's reactive. So we got kVAR, which is our power. So 27,000 divided by 1039. Yeah, let me do this on the calculator on the computer so you guys could see this. 27,000 divided by 1039 is 25.98. Multiply that by your 250 for overcurrent, and you're going to get 64.9. It was around, okay. Then we take ourselves over to, so just write that down on the side here, 64.96. Sorry, 65, call it. We take ourselves over to table 13. And we're looking. Table 13, we are looking at 65. So 65 amps. So we're in the range from 61 to 70. That's where our 65 would land. Okay, so anytime you're dealing with two of the following conditions, one, that it's a range, right? Anything on the left side where it says, so in this case, we have an ampacity of 65. We're looking for a 65 overcurrent protection. There is none. So we look into the range. The range being 61 to 70. Okay, that's where our 65 would fit. Okay, so these are the conditions. One is that if it's a range, and two, if it's a motor, hermetic, or a capacitor, you have to size down. Mandatory. So in this case, we got our 65. It fits in the range of 61 to 70. We cannot use 70 because it is a capacitor. So we have to size down to 60. Now, I'm pretty sure if it was just a normal transformer, if you're in the range, you go across, you stay. But because it is a capacitor, we're in the range, we go across, we size down. So that is for motors, hermetics, and capacitors, one size down if you land in a range. So in this case, we're going to use a 60 amp overcurrent protection. Because it's a capacitor, we size down. Next question. What is the minimum requirement for a flexible wiring method in a zone 1 hazardous location? So this would bring us to section 18. What is the minimum requirement for a flexible wiring method in a zone 1 hazardous location? Using the table of contents, we know as soon as we hear zone 1 hazardous locations, we're looking at 18. We scroll down, table of contents, we're looking at hazardous locations, right? The question is asking about zone 1 hazardous locations. Table of contents, installations in zone 1 locations. So we'll take ourselves over to 185 and we'll check it out. So we're in 18 and I scrolled down. I came across installations in zone 1 locations. I see wiring methods zone 1, and we got the wiring method shall be threaded rigid metal conduit with explosion proof, flame proof, or flame proof DB fittings, or hazardous location cables with associated cable glands suitably for their applications. Explosion proof, flame proof fittings and joints shall be threaded for connection. We read the answers, and we have explosion proof flexible connector. Quickly reading all the other answers, none of them seem suitable, so we just go ahead with explosion proof flexible connector. Next question. What equipment protection level EPL mark is the lowest level that would apply to electrical equipment intended for use in explosive atmospheres? So automatically explosive atmospheres, you're going right back to section 18. So we'll just open that right back up. And it's asking about GA, GB, GC, GD. I've seen these at the beginning of 18. There were some terminologies or some definitions of some things here. So GA, GB, GC. And they're asking about the EPL mark. What equipment protection level mark is the lowest level that would apply to electrical equipment intended for use in explosive atmospheres? So as I'm reading, GC says equipment for explosive gas atmospheres, lowest level that would apply to electrical equipment intended for use in explosive atmospheres. Okay, so these are explosive gas atmospheres. At the top here, you got explosive dust atmospheres. GC being the most minimum of level of protection. I guess it would be lower than high and very high, I would assume. So, and then explosive atmosphere definition here, a mixture with air under atmospheric conditions of flammable substance in the form of gas vapor. So I took a shot and I was able to get it right. So GC, Rule 18002, special terminology. What is the minimum thickness of wooden boards used for the support of a 3-gang switch box?